The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists cites nuclear weapons and AI as rationale for moving the Doomsday clock to 85 seconds to midnight. This is a sanctioned misdirection. The public imagination is anchored to the kinetic imagery of a missile launch, a symmetric state-on-state exchange. This is a profound analytic error. The cost-benefit analysis of a kinetic strike is obsolete. The true systemic vector is not loud, it is silent. Analysts at RUSI and CSIS have mapped the critical vulnerability. It is not in the sky, it is on the ocean floor. Trillions of dollars in transactions, military commands, and logistical data travel through a handful of undersea fiber optic cables. This is the central nervous system of global power. An adversary does not need to match a carrier strike group. They need only to achieve strategic silence. The second vector targets low Earth orbit. The blinding of satellite constellations is not science fiction. It is a documented capability. The result of a coordinated strike on these two vectors, sea and space, is the creation of a blind Leviathan, a nation-state possessing overwhelming military power, but with its eyes and ears severed. All strategic awareness is gone. The financial markets flatline. The command and control network goes dark. For a blind Leviathan, there is only one remaining protocol. When situational awareness is zero and a decapitation strike cannot be ruled out, the system defaults to its highest state of alert. Launch on warning becomes the only logical response to ambiguity. This is the mathematical certainty of asymmetric escalation. The final move is not a mistake triggered by a missile. It is the designed response to a solvency crisis triggered by silence. The motive for asymmetric escalation is not strategic preference. It is a solvency crisis. A state's decision to pivot away from conventional warfare is a mathematical function of its own internal decay. Consider the analysis from geopolitical strategists at CSIS regarding Russia's kinetic operations. The war itself is framed not as a projection of strength, but as a domestic liability, an unpopular conflict consuming political capital and national liquidity at an unsustainable rate. This is the blueprint for a solvency crisis. The state is bleeding resources to maintain a symmetric, kinetic posture it can no longer afford. Its capacity to match a peer adversary, dollar for dollar, tank for tank, has evaporated. This weakness is not a battlefield vulnerability. It is a balance sheet crisis. It forces a protocol change. The pivot to asymmetry is therefore not a choice, but a requirement. Why build a $10 billion aircraft carrier when you can leverage your opponent's own engineered weaknesses for a fraction of the cost? The attack surface shifts from the battlefield to the adversary's internal fragilities. A central bank navigating a crisis under political pressure, or a populace conditioned into dependency by aggressive pharma marketing. This logic explains why low-cost, high-impact technologies like AI and drones represent an accelerant. They are the delivery system for this new vector of conflict. This forced pivot, born from an adversary's solvency crisis, is what corners a conventionally dominant power. The response protocol becomes disproportionate escalation, which is why the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists cites nuclear risk and AI as drivers, moving the Doomsday clock to 85 seconds to midnight. The escalation is not a miscalculation. It is the final, logical outcome of the asymmetric design. The core of asymmetric escalation is not philosophical. It is mathematical. Reports from strategic bodies like the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, provide the raw data. A $5 million main battle tank is now a primary target for a $500 AI-guided drone. This is not a 10-to-1 or a 100-to-1 cost differential. It is a 10,000-to-1 kinetic cost liability. The math does not lie. This economic inversion triggers what analysts call the democratization of violence. The immense capital and industrial base once required to project lethal force has been rendered obsolete by off-the-shelf technology. An adversary no longer needs to build a rival air force or navy. They need only a shipping container of consumer electronics and access to open-source targeting software. The barrier to entry for creating a strategic effect, liquidating a key asset, disrupting a logistics hub, has collapsed to near zero. A system engineered for symmetric, high-cost warfare is now facing a solvency crisis. It cannot sustain attrition against an enemy whose primary weapon costs less than a single artillery shell. Every destroyed tank is not just a tactical loss, it's a multi-million-dollar write-down on the national balance sheet. When faced with an unwinnable economic war on the ground, the protocol dictates vertical escalation. This is the blueprint that moves the doomsday clock forward, not by mistake, but by design. The primary battle space is not a demarcated border. It is a distributed network of engineered vulnerabilities. While legacy systems track carrier groups and missile silos, the true staging grounds are being calibrated in what strategic analysts at CSIS term proxy laboratories. Regional instability, whether in the developing world or even within Western-aligned nations like South Africa or Canada, is not the root cause of systemic risk. It is a symptom, and more importantly, a test bed. In these gray zones, adversaries are not rehearsing invasions. They are stress-testing our solvency. The objective is to discover the precise, low-cost input required to generate a disproportionate, high-cost systemic failure. This is the new mathematical certainty of warfare. While we measure readiness in divisions, they measure it in the societal chaos generated per dollar of investment in disruption. The future of war, as defined by the proliferation of AI and drones, is not symmetric. It is parasitic. It exploits pre-existing conditions, the political pressure placed upon a central bank to prevent a crisis, as noted with the Federal Reserve, or the fragility of a population deliberately made dependent on a pharmaceutical industrial complex for chronic conditions. These are not separate issues. They are integrated attack surfaces. This asymmetric model forces a solvency crisis upon the target state. When a low-cost, deniable vector can threaten systemic collapse, the incumbent power has only one protocol remaining in its playbook: disproportionate, kinetic escalation. This is not an accident. It is a deliberately engineered outcome. It is why the bulletin of the atomic scientists moved the doomsday clock forward. The path to midnight is no longer paved by a symmetric arms race, but by an asymmetric trap that leaves launch on warning as the only perceived escape. The calibration shot will not be kinetic. It will target the intersection of financial liquidity and supply chain dependency. Within the next 12 months, a coordinated glitch will cripple a major U.S. West Coast port's automated terminal operations for 48 to 72 hours. According to CSIS analysis, the vector will be a low-cost swarm of autonomous drones, referencing known advancements in AI-driven warfare, source number 4, causing physical damage that presents as a catastrophic software failure. Attribution will be a mathematical impossibility. The objective is not asset liquidation. It is to force a choice upon a politically pressured Federal Reserve, source number 2, and to model the societal panic as supply chains for critical goods, including pharmaceuticals, source number 3, seize. This is a non-nuclear event designed by an adversary to measure how close a system built for conventional dominance is to a solvency crisis. They are calibrating their next move.